It's kind of like that with this whole 50 Cent and Rick Ross thing.
Totally.
It's heating up in a big way.
Yeah, and it's not typical.
And it's not your typical rap beef at all.
No.
There's a real sense that something's like fundamentally shifted.
Absolutely. Like we've seen our fair share of industry clashes over the years, but this emergence of these tapes and these leaks, it feels different.
Yeah.
There's a strategy in play here that is creating a real storm for Rick Ross.
Yeah, and these aren't just, your run-of-the-mill, like, gossip rag kind of rumors and things like that. These are tapes that are being reported as linking Ross and Diddy to something that's being described as really messy. And, Ross's reaction has been anything but subtle.
Yeah. It's really interesting to think about the fact that 50 Cent might have been playing a very, very long game here, going all the way back to 2009. When Ross first kind of took those initial shots at him, we're talking like a decade and a half.
Yeah, it's
a simmering tension that's kind of led up to this moment.
Yeah, it's a long time to hold a grudge.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to like a deep personal element to all of this.
Yeah.
To wait this long implies a deliberate accumulation of either evidence or opportunity. Clearly, those early exchanges, they left a lasting mark.
Yeah, and the way that these tapes were released was so sudden.
Totally.
There was like no build-up, no hints or anything.
Yeah.
50 Cent just posted the first one.
Yeah.
And basically just let the footage speak for itself.
Right.
So you can just imagine like the immediate kind of chaos that caused across the industry.
Yeah, it was like a mic drop moment, but amplified, in the digital age.
Totally. Yeah, and I think that was a big part of it, was the surprise element.
Absolutely.
Like it wasn't telegraphed at all.
Right.
It was just bam.
Yeah, by foregoing any pre-release fanfare,
Right.
50 Cent really maximized the initial shock value and the subsequent like scramble for everybody to figure out what does this mean. It forced an immediate, unfiltered reaction.
Okay, so what exactly is on these tapes that's causing such a stir?
Yeah.
I mean, from what's been circulating, it sounds like there's footage of Ross at like private parties with people that he had publicly said he didn't even know.
Right.
So that already is a pretty direct challenge to his narrative.
Precisely. I mean, in an industry where perception and authenticity are like the biggest currencies that you have, discrepancies like this are incredibly damaging. When you have visual evidence placing somebody in context they've previously denied, it creates a significant credibility gap.
Totally.
And it invites further scrutiny of every other statement that they've made in the past.
Yeah, and it's not just what you can see on these tapes. There are also some audio clips that are being circulated that allegedly capture Ross boasting about, quote, off the radar business dealings.
Yeah.
Even mentioning Diddy when he's talking about, setting up special arrangements with new artists. So that, this hints at all kinds of things that he's kind of been evasive about in the past.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting to me how sometimes just hearing someone's voice, can be so much more revealing than a carefully crafted public persona.
Absolutely. And the audio in this case adds a crucial layer of like firsthand confirmation.
Yeah.
It's one thing to be photographed somewhere.
Yep.
It's another thing to seemingly hear your own voice corroborating details that you've either avoided or denied in the past.
Totally.
And the Diddy connection, particularly given the current climate, it just really amplifies the potential for negative repercussions.
What is the overall feeling among those in the know about the potential fallout from these tapes? We're hearing talk about this being potentially career-ending for Ross, which sounds incredibly dramatic.
Yeah.
What makes this situation so critical?
Well, I think that kind of assessment that you're hearing likely arises from the fact that you have these direct contradictions. You have this association with these other high-profile controversies. Yeah. And then you also have just the sheer volume and the potential damaging nature of the material that's been leaked in an industry that's built on image and influence.
Right.
Having that kind of erosion of trust, it can have very severe and long-lasting consequences professionally. This could impact everything from collaborations to endorsements to things.
And that's not just about the current issues.
Right.
These tapes are also apparently resurfacing old rumors about Ross's come up in the industry. They're directly contradicting his long-held denials about certain connections of business dealings from earlier in his career.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, you try to bury the past,
Yeah.
but sometimes it gets dug back up.
The digital realm has a long memory.
It does.
And these tapes, they seem to be providing this visual and auditory counter-narrative to the story that Ross has been telling all these years.
Yeah.
And it's potentially validating those rumors that people have been whispering about for years.
Totally.
And further undermining his public image. It really raises the question of how much control any of us truly have over our past
Right.
in the digital age.
And the reaction behind the scenes sounds like something out of a movie. We're hearing about, just this chaotic environment, emergency meetings being called, and a sudden silence from many of those associated with Ross and Diddy.
Yeah.
That silence speaks volumes.
Yeah, the immediate silence is deafening, and in an industry that's fueled by constant promotion and networking,
Right.
for everyone to go quiet like that,
Yeah.
it likely indicates a combination of shock,
Yeah.
potential legal concerns, and just a wait-and-see approach.
Right.
But to see, like, how bad is this really going to get
Yeah.
before anyone aligns themselves. People are likely assessing their own potential exposure
Totally.
and trying to avoid being caught in the crossfire.
So apparently Ross's initial reaction to all of this was to kind of dismiss the first tape as a joke. But that changed pretty quickly once he actually saw the content.
Yeah.
And his reaction shifted to extreme anger. And he went into what's being described as scorched earth mode.
Yeah.
So what does that typically entail in a situation like this?
Scorched earth implies that someone is willing to inflict widespread damage,
Yeah.
potentially even on themselves,
Wow.
in response to a threat. So in this context, it
Yeah.
suggests that Ross might lash out indiscriminately, revealing information about others,
Yeah.
regardless of what it costs him personally. It's a very volatile
Yeah.
and often self-destructive response.
So his immediate reaction after seeing it was a 15-minute Instagram rant filled with threats and accusations, which reportedly surprised even his own inner circle.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty significant public display.
Yeah, a 15-minute unscripted outburst on
Yeah.
social media, particularly when emotions are running that high,
Right.
is a very risky strategy. While it might offer some temporary release of
Right.
frustration,
Yeah.
it also tends to generate further negative attention, and it just provides more fuel for the fire. The fact that his own team
Yeah.
was reportedly taken aback by this
Yeah.
suggests that this wasn't a measured or a
Right.
strategic response.
So then he also apparently sent voice messages trying to get the video taken down,
Right.
which at that point is kind of like trying to put toothpaste back in the tube.
Totally.
When something is out there online, it's out there.
Yeah, once something like this gains traction online, attempting to suppress it through individual requests is almost always a losing battle.
Yep.
The architecture of the internet
Yeah.
allows for rapid and widespread replication. So complete removal is virtually impossible.
Then came the 3 a.m. Instagram live session.
Right.
He was naming names, allegedly revealing industry secrets and more threats. It sounds like every time he posted,
Yeah.
he was just digging himself deeper.
Late night unfiltered communication
Yeah.
like that often points to a lack of sleep,
Yeah.
potentially impaired judgment,
Yeah.
and airing these kinds of grievances and sensitive information in that kind of public and spontaneous way
Yeah.
can have very serious and lasting repercussions on
Yeah.
both your personal and professional relationships.
So then things took an even darker turn because Ross allegedly leaked addresses, including locations associated with 50 Cent's family.
Yeah.
And we're hearing that this crossed the line even for some of his own associates, and they started to distance themselves.
Yeah,
Bringing family into something like this just seems so far beyond the pale.
absolutely. Involving family members immediately escalates the conflict
Yeah.
to a much more serious
Yeah.
and potentially dangerous level.
Right. Yeah.
This goes way beyond professional rivalry.
Yeah.
It's a personal threat. And the fact that you have these reports that his associates are distancing themselves,
Yeah.
that really underscores the severity of this action
Yeah.
and all the potential legal and ethical ramifications that could come from that.
His team also tried to use copyright claims to get the tapes taken down.
Right.
But, I mean, with the tapes being shared so widely, it was largely ineffective
Yeah.
and really just highlights how difficult it is to control information in the digital age once it's out there.
Yeah, copyright claims can sometimes be a tool for content removal,
Yeah.
but their efficacy is significantly diminished when the material has already gone viral
Right.
across multiple platforms and is being re-uploaded by countless users.
Yeah.
It becomes this constant game of whack-a-mole.
Clearly.
You just can't keep up.
And apparently, Ross even offered substantial amounts of money to find out who leaked the footage to 50 Cent, which just shows how desperate he was to understand how this happened.
Yeah, offering that kind of money indicates a high level of panic
Yeah.
and a very strong desire to identify the source of the leak.
Right.
It suggests a real feeling of betrayal
Totally.
and a need to regain control of the narrative, no matter the cost.
So his social media activity became increasingly erratic, with multiple burner accounts popping up
Yeah.
after his main account faced restrictions.
Right.
It seems like he was determined to keep communicating no matter what.
Yeah, I think the creation use of brainer accounts to circumvent platform restrictions
Yeah.
really highlights this compulsion
Yeah.
to keep broadcasting his message,
That's-
even when his primary channels are being moderated or restricted.
Right.
And it can be perceived as a real lack of self-awareness.
Totally.
And it can further exacerbate that negative perception that's already surrounding the situation.
And then, just as you thought things couldn't get any messier, Ross allegedly started involving other artists and exposing financial disputes and under-the-table deals.
Right.
It seemed like he was trying to pull other people down with him.
It does. It very much aligns with that scorched earth mentality that we were talking about by implicating others, by revealing potentially damaging information about other people.
Yeah.
The aim might be to divert attention from himself
Yeah.
or to create this sense of shared culpability
Right.
so that it becomes harder for
Right.
individuals to publicly condemn his actions. But that strategy often backfires because it leads to a wider fracturing of relationships within the industry.
And that seems to be exactly what's happening. The industry is reportedly dividing into factions,
Yeah.
with some siding with 50 Cent
Yeah.
and others initially attempting to defend Ross, although his subsequent behavior has made that increasingly difficult.
It has.
It's hard to defend someone when they keep doing things like this.
In high-stakes public disputes like this, alliances tend to solidify
Yeah.
based on pre-existing relationships,
Yeah.
perceptions of power dynamics, and,
Right.
and individuals' own potential vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
I think Ross's erratic responses have likely made it very, very challenging for even his closest allies
Totally.
to offer public support
Yeah.
without risking damage to their own reputation by association.
And we're even hearing about specific artists, Meek Mill, DJ Khaled,
Yeah.
Future, Drake, showing subtle or overt signs of distancing themselves from Ross or potentially aligning with 50 Cent.
Right.
And that's huge.
It is.
When you have those kinds of moves
That is a big deal.
from prominent figures in the industry.
The actions of these kinds of influential artists, they act like a barometer
Totally.
of the prevailing sentiment within the industry. Their shifts, even subtle ones in who they associate with,
Totally.
can signal broader trends and influence how others perceive the situation and ultimately who they choose to align with.
So beyond just the personal drama and the industry fallout, there's also the potential impact on Ross's business ventures.
Absolutely.
We're talking about things like Wingstop franchises, Checkers franchises. You know, corporate partners and those kinds of businesses are very, very sensitive to negative publicity. How could this scandal affect those ventures?
Corporate partnerships are built on maintaining a positive brand image and public trust.
Yeah.
So a scandal of this magnitude
Yeah.
creates significant reputational risk
Totally.
for associated businesses.
Yeah.
There are concerns about consumer perception.
Yeah.
There are potential financial repercussions. I think companies are going to become very hesitant to be so publicly linked to this kind of controversy.
Right.
And it's very possible that we're going to see a reevaluation of
Yeah.
partnerships and endorsements.
And it just adds to the uncertainty because there's also the possibility of more tapes being released by 50 Cent.
Right.
So it's kind of like waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah, that continued threat of further disclosures
Yeah.
is a very, very powerful tool for maintaining pressure and uncertainty.
Yeah.
It prevents any kind of closure.
Yeah.
And it forces everyone involved to constantly be on edge,
Yeah.
potentially influencing their future actions and statements.
This whole situation is also connected to a previous incident involving the DEA and an investigation related to Diddy. where a pretty large quantity of bottles that allegedly contain GHB were seized.
Yeah.
And that definitely adds another layer to the messy nature of what these tapes might actually involve.
Right.
What are the implications of GHB being mentioned in this context?
Well, the connection to a DEA investigation and the alleged presence of GHB introduces a potentially much more serious dimension to all of this that goes way beyond just your typical industry drama.
Right.
GHB, as you know, is known for its effects on euphoria, drowsiness, anxiety reduction, and memory impairment. So it raises some very serious questions about the activities that might be depicted in these tapes.
Right.
And the well-being and potential vulnerability of the people who are involved.
Right.
The DEA's involvement suggests that there could be legal ramifications here that extend far beyond just reputation damage.
We also have to talk about the ethical and legal aspects of these non-consensually recorded tapes.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about individuals' right to privacy.
Yeah.
The potential exploitation of moments and the potential for commercial exploitation of this material just complicates things even more.
Totally.
It really highlights the vulnerability of people in the public eye.
Right.
And it raises questions about the rights of anyone who might appear in these recordings without their consent.
This whole thing really makes you think about the power dynamics within the hip-hop industry.
Absolutely.
The motivations behind revenge and just how fragile a reputation can be. It really does. It lays bare the underlying tensions and rivalries that can exist beneath the surface of this industry.
Right.
And it demonstrates how quickly these personal conflicts can escalate and play out on this global stage. And it also underscores the enduring impact of online content and just the ongoing struggle to control your own public narrative when you have the potential for this kind of leaked private material.
And the long-term consequences for Ross and potentially others as more information comes to light are still very much up in the air. This could have ripple effects for quite some time.
I think so. I think the fallout from this could be extensive and long-lasting. It could reshape alliances and impact business practices within the industry.
Totally.
And the ongoing uncertainty surrounding these potential further revelations just adds to the precariousness of the entire situation.
It also forces us to really consider the complexities around privacy and consent in a world where everyone has a recording device in their pocket at all times.
It really raises some fundamental questions about personal boundaries in this increasingly surveilled society.
Right.
The ease with which private moments can be captured and disseminated necessitates this broader discussion about ethical considerations and respecting individual privacy in the digital age.
So what does this whole saga ultimately tell you about celebrity culture? The concept of accountability and the fact that your past actions can always come back to haunt you.
It's a stark reminder that in our digitally connected world, past actions can indeed resurface with very significant consequences, and that even the most carefully constructed narratives of these public figures can be challenged by completely unforeseen events. It also prompts us to reflect on the level of accountability that we expect from people in the public eye and the enduring impact of their choices, both personally and professionally.
It definitely leaves you with a lot to think about in a world where the potential for this kind of exposure is ever present.
Totally.
How do we navigate the lines between our public persona and our private life? And how long can the past truly stay hidden?
Great questions.
That's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me.